representation of the blood that was shed on the covenant. When we think about these things in understanding and believing and receiving Yeshua, which brought us clarity, not just to the Torah with the square script that we understand, but he also brought us clarity to the Torah with these particular drawings, that we can draw out understanding out of these and give us a lot broader sense of what's being given. You know, these serve to deepen our intimate relationship with Yahuwah. We understand his language fully. The next one, and I can never draw it right, so I'll give it a go anyway. But the next one is, let's see, well, there we go. Yeah, close enough. Nun. Nun is a representation of a seed sprouting forth a root. This gives an idea of continuance as well as son and heir. And we'll look at this in some of the words we'll discuss after we finish going through the letters. But it gives the idea of life moving on, that life continues to grow, and it's continued to be planted, it grows, drops seeds, and there's a continuance of life. Now the next one doesn't look anything like its counterparts, or like it does today. This is Sameh. Its original name was Sin, which means thorn. And this is supposed to be a drawing of a thorn. The meanings that this picture represents are to grab, to protect, and interestingly enough, it also means to hate. You know, we've heard the expression, a thorn in my side, that we have to overcome hatred. And this is Paul saying, help me to get rid of this thorn in my side. But Elohim says, my grace is sufficient. That because we have grace, we can work on getting rid of hurtful feelings that we might have for other people without the penalty of the law of sin and death. You know, grace, just because we have grace, doesn't erase our responsibility. Grace allows us to take responsibility. And because we're no longer under the law of sin and death, because of undeserved favor, that if I have a problem with somebody, I can resolve that problem without worrying about, the law of sin and death. So, sin is a thorn. We also get our word Sinai from sin. Sinai means thorny. The next one is originally written like this. Sometimes it's written like this, but it's ayin. Ayin means eye. It's the word for eye, but in the Proto-Hebrew, it's a drawing of the eye. Ayin represents watching and knowing. Ayin also represents shade, giving us the illusion of seeing both light and day. Or light and darkness, should I say. Light and darkness. And the first time we see ayin as the root of a word in Torah is in the word erev. There was evening and there was morning. So evening is a time when we have to make a distinction. Is it light or is it dark? So ayin, even in its Proto-Hebrew form, is still telling us that we have to perceive and we have to look to have clarity as to what's going on. Now, pay is an interesting way that it's done This is one form of pay. Later on down the road, it was simply that. Pei is supposed to be a drawing of a mouth. Its meanings are to blow, to scatter, and an edge. And when we look at pei, we understand the power that the mouth has, the power that the word has, that it can cut and it can scatter. So we have to be careful with what we say because we can hurt somebody. All right, the next one is kind of a...
All right, so what's the difference between the Gimal, since it's almost exactly the same way?
Huh?
The Gimal and the Pei, it's almost...
Well, Gimel...
So it's the foot.
Gimel is like this.
So the bottom thing...
Pei is more like this. It's more slanted. So you see that one's vertical and one's kind of angular.
Okay.
Okay, and this is why we have differing symbols down the road. And we have now a difference in appearance that one means foot and one means mouth. All right, everybody with me? All right. The next one we come to is, I don't know how to get a picture of a man laying on his side out of that. Originally it was actually like this, is what, well, this was the original. This is what it started to look like before it moved on to look like what it does now. But Zadi is a picture of a man on his side. The meaning represents in this drawing are to walk, to chase, to hunt, and to snare. And now how they get to walk and to chase out of a man on his side, I don't know. Huh?
It's to wait.
To wait?
Not walk.
To wait. Okay, to wait. To wait. But to chase, I don't understand, the guy's laying down. He's not going to chase a whole lot of anything. But it gives us an idea of patience. Zadi is also, like we've said in its modern day equivalent, in a square script equivalent, Zadi is this, where you have a person kneeling down with their hands up in worship. And Zadi gives us the idea also of righteousness. But to be patient, to be long-suffering, are two of the gifts that we have that we develop in the fruits of the Spirit. And it's through those things that leads us on our way to righteousness. All right. The next one has some interesting parallels. But the ancient symbol for Kaf was this, but it was also drawn like this. Kaf. Now Kaf, it's a drawing, in this case it's a drawing of an axe. In this case it's a drawing of the horizon, the sun coming over the horizon or going down over the horizon. So it's said to be a representation in the axe of division, separation, and we see this in the word Kodesh. Kodesh has been translated over and over as something holy, but Kodesh doesn't mean holy. Kodesh means to be set apart, to be separated for a special use. And in the sun coming up or going down over the horizon, we get an idea of time. That the sun rises, the sun sets, or the sun comes, that there's time involved. It gives us an idea of the seasons, and we would see this a lot in agricultural ideas without. But it's also an idea that we, as the earth, reflect light out. And it's something for us to consider, that we are made in his image and in his likeness. The sun, the light from Elohim, reflects off of us and is to reflect out to others. Kof also means to condense and to circle. All right, Resh. Let's see if I can get this one right. Resh. Well, kind of sort of. Didn't do. Pictograph is a drawing of the head of a man. It represents first, it represents the top, and it represents the head, as in the chieftain. And it also means beginning, something that goes in front. So this is what we get from Resh. And this is how, when we see this, we get an idea that something in this word is telling us that it either has the authority to be the chief or that it's moving in front of something. So it has an idea of beginning. All right. The ancient proto-pictograph of Shin is the two front teeth. And it's interesting. It represents sharp, it represents to press, and it represents to. Oh, it also represents to eat. So, you know, what you get from this meaning to press and to eat, sharp, but Shin moved on to this, which represented teeth. So it meant teeth, it meant tooth. And finally, when we combined, we turned, remember we had Sin became Samek, and Shin took on the meaning as Shin and Sin. So we get an idea of eat, we get an idea of press, in that we have to press on, we have to chew on what we learn from the Word in order to be able to differentiate what side or what point of view are we looking at. Are we looking at the flesh's point of view, or are we looking at Elohim's point of view? And finally, we get to Tav. The ancient proto-pictograph of the Tav is just two sticks, one laid over another. Tav means and represents a mark, a sign, and a monument. And all of these things are required in the making of a covenant. This was often the mark that people would leave in their covenant. So we put some things together to kind of give us an idea of how Proto-Hebrew works. We say we're looking at the word Father. We would spell it Av. So we would spell it like this. What do we see?
Aleph and Bet.
Okay, well we have Aleph and Bet.
Mm-hmm.
Aleph, the head of the bull, represents what?
Strength.
Strength. It represents power, authority. Okay. And Bet represents
Male,
house.
female, house.
Okay. But we say house, tent. So the father has the authority over the house. And this is what we're saying here, is that somebody that they're naming father has the authority, it has the strength, has to be the strength of the house. Now we look at mother, and we kind of wonder a little bit. We have, again, we have strength, but now we have the mem, which means what?
Water.
Water. Strong water. Strong water. In the history, back in these days, you would boil water, and you would take the hooves, and you would place them in the water, and you would reduce that down to make glue. Strong water. Something that glues things together. We have a father that is the strength of the house, but we have the mother that is the one that keeps everything organized and together within the home. These are the ideas that are being projected in the makeup of these words. We have, let's see, it's a popular one. We have hell. El. Now, we say El means God. Really, there is actually no word for God in Hebrew. So what do we see in these two things that represent our master? Well, we have strong, we have mighty, we have leader, and then we have authority, teacher, guide, and also leader. So what do we see in El?
The leader's leader.
The leader's leader, but he is strong. He is
And he has
mighty
authority.
in his authority to teach us and to guide us. El actually means mighty one. Is what it basically represents. When we think about Elohim, it means more than simply God. Elohim means judge, means redeemer, it means leader, it means master. All the things that we look to Elohim for. We look to him for guidance, to show us what direction to go, to lead us, to grab us by the hand and take us to where we need to go. So we consider not falling down. We consider maybe what is this word?
No.
Yod, He, Vav, He.
No.
What do we see in the name of our Master? What do we see in the name of Yahuwah Elohim? What does he do for us? It's not necessarily what he does for us. This name more puts out what we do for him. Because we said the Yod means worship. We are to worship Elohim. It means to observe or behold. So we are to observe and behold our Elohim. This means, well, it means to attach or to hook. But it also means to add, so we can say prosper. And what else does